20 years of my life, and he didn't even look me in the eyes. That's how it ended. No thank you. No handshake. No explanation. Just a silent nod from the HR assistant and a sealed envelope. I didn't even get to take my coffee mug. But let me take you back to that morning. It was supposed to be a celebration, my 20th anniversary at the company. I had gotten up early, shaved carefully, and even wore the navy blue suit my wife always said made me look like the man they listen to first in the boardroom. I walked into the office expecting smiles. A few balloons maybe. Or at least, hey Damon, congrats, 20 years. That's something. But the office was quiet, colder than usual. No one looked up, and no one said anything. Something felt wrong. Before I could even set my briefcase down, my name popped up on my phone. Damon, HR needs to see you. Now, I laughed out loud at first. Thought it was a joke. Maybe part of a surprise party setup. But when I entered the room and saw the folder on the desk and the HR manager's grim, professional expression, I knew. I wasn't being celebrated, that I was being erased. Your role has been made redundant, Damon. Effective immediately. Just like that. No explanation. No recognition of the nights I stayed late to finish reports others left incomplete. No memory of the client presentations I saved at the last minute. Not even a polite excuse, just, you'll receive a severance package. Legal details are included. And that was it. If you've ever walked out of a building you helped build, knowing they won't even miss your name on the email list, you'll understand what I felt. But if you haven't, imagine watching a house you built from the foundation up get sold to someone who doesn't even ask your name. That was me. My desk was already packed. My computer access revoked. No one came over to say goodbye. Not even Marcus, the guy I had mentored from intern to senior analyst, could look me in the eyes. You know what hurt most? I didn't even get angry. I just felt humiliated, like I was never there to begin with. Let me back up for a second. My name is Damon Mitchell. I started working for Carrington and White the same year. They moved out of a shared space and rented their first floor of offices in downtown Chicago. I was the third employee. When I joined, there wasn't even a coffee machine, just a pot and a guy named Gerald who always forgot to bring filters. 20 years, 20 birthdays, countless weekends. I stayed loyal even when better offers came. Because I believed in the mission. Because I believed in the founder, my boss, James Carrington. He was my mentor.my guide, and apparently my executioner. He didn't even show up that day. We'll mail the rest of your things, the HR assistant mumbled as I left the building. I stood on the curb outside the building, holding that envelope like it was radioactive. People passed me without a glance. And right there, in the middle of a city that never cared, I made a quiet decision. They took everything from me, but they forgot one thing. I knew everything about their top clients. Not just their names, I built the relationships myself. I solved their problems. I was the reason they stayed with Carrington and White for years. They didn't just fire me. They freed me. You just created a competitor, I whispered to myself as I crossed the street. Now, tell me, if this had happened to you, would you walk away quietly? Would you let them win? When I walked away from Carrington and White that day, I wasn't angry. I was focused. You see, I had spent 2 decades solving problems for clients, for teams, for the company. Now, for the first time, I had one problem of my own, but I also had something no layoff notice could take away: my reputation. Clients didn't call Carrington and White because they liked the logo. They called because I answered. So that evening, I sat down at my kitchen table, poured myself a cup of strong black coffee, the same kind I'd survived on during those late client nights, and opened a blank notebook. At the top of the page, I wrote, Damon Mitchell, Phase 1. And beneath that, you know them better than they know themselves. Let me explain something. When you work in corporate client relations for 20 years, you don't just learn strategies and market trends. You learn people. I remembered which clients hated long presentations, which ones only trusted handshakes, not contracts, which ones had teenage kids going off to college, and which ones were secretly considering mergers. I knew which CFOs were close to retirement, and which CEOs were too proud to admit they were burning cash. I had been their confidant, their fixer, and their firewall, and now I wasn't even with the firm. But they didn't know that yet. Over the next 2 weeks, I didn't send a single resume. No LinkedIn post, no desperate call for opportunities. Instead, I bought a burner phone. I contacted a former client. Let's call him Mark, CEO of a logistics firm. We had closed a $10 million deal 2 years ago. I remembered his daughter's name and the fact that he had a weird obsession with old jazz records. So I texted, "Still spinning Miles Davis on Fridays? Hope your daughter's settling into NYU. I'd love to catch up. Let me buy you lunch. No suits, no sales talk. Just Damon." He replied in 5 minutes. We met at a quiet restaurant in River North. After a few laughs and some light talk, he leaned forward and said, "So what's going on, Damon? You leave Carrington?" I didn't correct him. I simply said, "Let's just say the company made a mistake, and I'm not planning on letting it go unnoticed." He paused, then smiled. "Well, if you're building something, call me. You're the only reason I stayed with them this long anyway." That was the first domino. I didn't even ask, he offered. That night, I launched a private LLC, Mitchell Advisory Group. Clean, lean, invisible. No website, no flashy pitch deck. Just a logo I designed myself and a quiet mission: take back what they never appreciated. Over the next month, I met 6 more former clients. 4 of them asked the same question: "Are you working with Carrington still?" To which I replied, "Not anymore, but I'm still working." And that was enough. Meanwhile, word started to circulate. James Carrington must have heard something. I know the man. He probably assumed I was just looking for another employer. He didn't know I was becoming his competitor. I hired a part-time assistant, my nephew, fresh out of business school. We worked out of my garage. 2 months in, we had 3 clients under contract. But I knew I couldn't just build a shadow of Carrington and White. I had to build something smarter, cleaner, faster. Every decision I made came from what I learned watching my old company bloat itself into arrogance. They had forgotten that loyalty isn't permanent. It's earned. It started with an email, a simple message, .no header, .no signature. Just, "Damon, we're ready. Let's make the switch." CLCL stood for Cynthia Langford, VP of Operations at Hensley Steelworks, one of Carrington and White's biggest legacy clients. We'd worked together for 8 years. I had helped her navigate 3 CEOs, 2 restructures, and 1 ugly lawsuit. She once told me, half jokingly, "I trust you more than I trust my own board." And now, she was trusting me, not my former employer. I stared at the screen for a while, heart pounding. This wasn't just a client. This was a message, a $12.5 million message. I called her the next morning. My voice steady, professional, but inside I was on fire. "Cynthia, before we move forward, are you sure this is what you want?" She laughed. "Damon, Carrington sent some junior I've never met to our last strategy meeting. Didn't even know my product line. You were the relationship. They just didn't see it." She paused. "But I do." And with that, Hensley Steelworks became Mitchell Advisory Group's biggest client. I didn't celebrate with champagne. I celebrated by buying a second laptop and hiring a proper legal consultant. I knew what came next. Carrington and White would feel this like a punch to the ribs. And they did. Exactly 1 week later, I received a call from a blocked number. I ignored it. It rang again that I answered. James Carrington's voice came through like smoke from a burning bridge. "Damon, we need to talk." I didn't say anything. "I don't know what you're doing, but let's be smart about this." I smiled, because now he sounded afraid. "We've had a long relationship. Maybe there's still a place for you here in a different capacity." There was the offer to return, dressed in empty diplomacy. "James," I said quietly, "you didn't speak to me for the last 2 years unless it was about numbers. Now you want to talk." He hesitated. "You're making enemies, Damon." "No, James. I'm just reminding old friends who they were really loyal to." I hung up. I wish I could tell you that was the end of it. But Carrington didn't just sit back and let me take what was mine. No, he started calling clients, planting rumors saying I was bitter, unstable, even unlicensed, which was laughable. I had signed half of their most complex contracts for 2 decades. But fear makes people stupid. And James was panicking. The more he tried to smear me, the more clients reached out, curious, concerned, and left impressed. Because when you tell people not to look at something, they almost always do. The second big shift came when Echelon Brands, a high-end retail chain, canceled a review meeting with Carrington and White and booked a private consultation with me the next day. That client alone, worth $4.3 million annually. James must have broken a glass that night. Maybe more. His pride couldn't handle it, losing not just clients, but the illusion of control. You might think I felt satisfied. Truth is, I felt nothing. Not yet. This wasn't revenge, not really. This was rectification. For every forgotten overtime, every ignored idea, every company lunch where I was the last to be thanked, if I was thanked at all, this was about making sure people like James Carrington finally understood. Silence has consequences. Let me ask you something. If your boss fired you without a word, and now he was watching his company fall apart, would you stop here? Or would you keep going? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know what you'd do. They say the bigger the tree, the louder the crash. Carrington and White was once an unshakable oak, tall, proud, full of swagger. Now it was starting to rot from the inside, and I was the fungus they never saw coming. The day I knew it was collapsing, it wasn't when we stole another client. It wasn't even when my inbox started filling with resumes from their own employees. It was the headlines. Key accounts depart from Carrington and White amid rumors of mismanagement, 3 different industry blogs, 2 financial newsletters, and 1 brutal LinkedIn post from a former Carrington employee that simply read, "You should have valued the right people. You didn't. Now watch." I didn't write it, but I felt it. Let me tell you how fast things fell apart once the reputation cracks started showing. Week 1, 2 more clients canceled their annual reviews with Carrington and White. One of them, Theragene Pharmaceuticals, reached out directly to me. "Damon, we're tired of being passed around to junior analysts. You were the reason we stayed. Let's reconnect." Another domino. Week 2, an anonymous review popped up on Glassdoor. "If you're not related to the boss or willing to kiss up, don't expect your work to matter." This place lost its soul the day they let Damon walk. I didn't ask for that, but I felt it. Week 3, a recruiter from Carrington's own HR team emailed me privately. "Off the record, is Mitchell Advisory Group hiring?" That one made me pause. It was happening. They weren't just losing clients. They were losing faith from the inside out. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. No press. No gloating. I let the market speak for me. And it did. Revenue projections for Carrington and White were revised down by 32% in Q2. 3 board members resigned in under 10 days. I got a message from an old contact at the firm. Carrington's yelling at walls in the boardroom. His nephew, the one he promoted over you, just handed in his resignation. Oh, the irony. And then came the meeting request. From James Carrington himself. He wanted to meet that in person at the same hotel lobby where he once held his senior strategy summits. I almost declined, but something in me wanted to see his face. So I agreed. The lobby was empty except for 1 man in a wrinkled blazer. Carrington looked smaller, older, like the world had shifted and left him behind. He stood, extended his hand that I didn't take it. "Damon, this has gone far enough." I smiled politely. "Has it? Look, I admit things weren't handled well. You should have gotten a better send-off. But this vendetta, you're burning down a legacy." "No, James," I said, leaning forward, calm as ever. "I'm just reclaiming the one you tried to bury me under." He swallowed hard. "What do you want?" "I don't want anything from you. I just want to make sure the next time you look at your client list, you remember who really built it." I left him sitting there, quiet, humiliated, crumbling like the empire he thought would last forever. But let me ask you something. I stood in a new office, all glass, steel, and light. From this floor, you could see the river curve beneath the skyline, the same one I used to walk by every evening on my way home from Carrington and White. Funny how perspective changes when you're standing above it all. 3 years ago, I was handed a cold envelope and a colder goodbye. Today, I stood at the head of Mitchell Advisory Group, with a client portfolio that had outperformed every Q4 forecast. And most of them, they used to belong to Carrington and White. They don't exist anymore. James Carrington sold off what was left 6 months ago. The brand, absorbed. The staff, dispersed. The legacy, forgotten. But let's be honest, that's not what matters now. Let me tell you what does. After the dust settled, I asked myself a simple question. What are you going to build now that no one is watching you, but everyone's listening? You see, revenge can fuel you. But legacy guides you. So I started doing things differently. I hired the intern no one would take a chance on. I mentored young consultants without asking for loyalty in return. I met with clients, not just to close deals, but to ask them what they wish someone had asked them 10 years ago. And I made one rule for everyone on my team. You're not here to sell. You're here to listen, solve, and leave people better than you found them. Sometimes I still get calls from old employees, from people I once shared late-night deadlines with, who now want to know, how did you do it, Damon? How did you go from being erased to building something this powerful? I always give the same answer. I stopped waiting for someone to value me, and I became the man who couldn't be ignored. Last month, we were featured in Forbes, The Silent Rise of Mitchell Advisory Group, how one fired executive built a client empire. They asked for a photo of me sitting behind my desk. I refused. Instead, I sent a photo of my entire team in front of the office, laughing, coffee in hand, sleeves rolled up, working, because that is the real legacy. And now, to you, yes, you, reading or listening to this right now, what did you take from this story? Have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever been pushed aside, only to discover your worth when it mattered most? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your stories, because maybe it's your turn to rise. And if you want to follow more stories like mine, stories of quiet revenge, earned redemption, and building something unshakable from the ashes, subscribe, because this was my story, but yours might be next.